At 0924 in the Norwegian Sea, the officer of the deck on USS Gerald R. Ford raised his binoculars. 3 nautical miles off the port bow, a black conning tower had broken the surface. The flag was Russian. The hull was Project 885M, the newest attack submarine the Russian Federation has ever launched. She was inside the screen, inside the destroyers, inside the cruisers, inside the 2 American Virginia-class submarines escorting the carrier. For the previous 18 hours, she had been inside torpedo range of the most heavily defended warship on Earth. Nobody on the surface heard her. Nobody in the air heard her. Nobody beneath the water heard her. This is the story of how a $1.5 billion submarine made $37 billion of NATO defense look like nothing, and why every Navy that watched it happen knows it can happen again. Steadfast Defender. NATO's largest military exercise since the end of the Cold War, 90,000 troops, 50 warships, more than 80 aircraft. The biggest combined fleet assembled in the North Atlantic in 3 generations. At the center of it, Carrier Strike Group 12, USS Gerald R. Ford, the most expensive warship ever built, valued at $13.3 billion. Around her, the most layered anti-submarine defense the United States Navy operates. 2 Arleigh Burke destroyers with hull-mounted sonar and towed arrays. 1 Ticonderoga cruiser running active and passive search. 2 Virginia-class fast-attack submarines sanitizing the water beneath the formation. A squadron of MH-60R Romeo helicopters dipping sonar in a rotating screen. P-8 Poseidon patrol aircraft dropping sonobuoy fields across a 100-mile arc. Behind all of it, the IUSS, the Integrated Undersea Surveillance System, the descendant of Cold War SOSUS. Hydrophone arrays on the seabed, listening to every signature in the North Atlantic, all feeding into a fusion center in Virginia. Combined cost of this anti-submarine wall, over $37 billion. Built to detect, track, and kill any Soviet submarine the moment it left port. Refined for 40 years. Tested against every hull the Russian Federation has ever launched. On the morning of the exercise, the commander of Carrier Strike Group 12 told his staff the formation was, quote, "as clean as I have ever seen the water." He was wrong. He had been wrong for 18 hours. Look at how the defense is supposed to work. Layer 1. SOSUS hydrophones strung along the GIUK gap, the Greenland-Iceland-United Kingdom passage every Russian submarine from the Northern Fleet has to transit. Anything that crosses this line, NATO is supposed to know about within minutes. Layer 2. Patrol aviation. P-8 Poseidon aircraft dropping up to 48 sonobuoys per sortie, building search patterns hundreds of miles wide. Anything that gets past SOSUS, the Poseidons are supposed to find before it reaches striking distance. Layer 3. Surface escort. Destroyers and cruisers with hull-mounted active sonar and towed passive arrays, hunting in a continuous screen around the carrier. Layer 4. The inner ring. American attack submarines. The only platforms quiet enough to hear another submarine before it hears them. Layer 5. The helicopter screen. MH-60R Romeos dipping sonar in close. The last line. 5 layers. $37 billion. 40 years of doctrine. K561 Kazan passes through every single one of them, and nobody hears her until she chooses to be heard. K561 Kazan departed her base at Severomorsk 36 hours before NATO's exercise began. Project 885M, Yasin M class. The newest attack submarine the Russian Federation has ever launched. Estimated unit cost, $1.6 billion US. Her commanding officer was Captain First Rank Morozov. His orders were not to attack. They were not even to engage. His orders were simpler and far more humiliating. Get close, be invisible, then be seen. Kazan crossed the GIUK gap at a depth of 280 meters, traveling at 4 knots. At that speed, her pump jet propulsion produces less radiated noise than the ambient sound of the ocean itself. The hydrophones on the seabed picked up the cargo ships above her. They picked up the whales kilometers to the west. They did not pick her up. 12 hours into the transit, she passed beneath a P-8 Poseidon flying a routine racetrack pattern. The aircraft dropped a field of sonobuoys directly into her track. The buoys recorded ambient noise. Biological contacts. The propellers of a Norwegian fishing trawler. They did not record Kazan. 6 hours after that, she passed within 4 nautical miles of one of the 2 Virginia-class submarines escorting the carrier group. The Virginia is the quietest American submarine ever built. Her acoustic sensors are the best in the United States Navy. She heard nothing. At 03:24 in the morning, Kazan reached her assigned waypoint. 6 nautical miles abeam of USS Gerald R. Ford. She slowed to 2 knots. She extended her passive sonar mast. She listened, and she waited. 18 hours after entering the engagement zone, Kazan moved. Captain Morozov closed his distance from 6 nautical miles to 3. Inside the inner screen, inside the helicopter dipping pattern, inside what every American doctrine document calls the bubble, the volume of water that the most expensive carrier in human history is supposed to completely own. A Mark 48 heavyweight torpedo is the standard American submarine-launched weapon. At 3 nautical miles, its flight time is 46 seconds. From launch to impact against the keel of USS Gerald R. Ford, the carrier would have 46 seconds to react. 46 seconds is not enough time to maneuver a 100,000-ton aircraft carrier. It's not enough time to launch countermeasures. It's not, in practice, enough time to do anything at all. Kazan was in a position where, had the order come, she would have killed the most expensive warship ever built before anyone on board knew they were under attack. The order did not come. At 09:24 local time, Captain Morozov gave the order to blow forward and aft ballast tanks. Kazan came up. Not in an attack profile, not at flank speed. Slowly, deliberately, in clear visual range of the carrier she had been stalking. Her conning tower broke the surface at exactly the angle a submarine surfaces when it wants to be photographed. The Russian naval ensign, blue St. Andrew's cross on white, was already rigged before she came up. For 4 minutes, she ran parallel to USS Gerald R. Ford on the surface, slightly slower than the carrier's 18-knot transit speed, letting the Americans read her hull number, her class, and her flag. Then she dove. NATO did not find her again for 11 hours. To understand what Kazan actually did, you have to understand why she was inaudible. 3 technologies combine on the Yasin M hull. Together, they produce a submarine that radiates less noise than the ocean she travels through. First, the propulsion. Yasin M doesn't use a conventional propeller. She uses a pump jet, an enclosed propulsor where the rotor spins inside a shrouded duct. No cavitation, no tip vortex. The acoustic signature of pump jet propulsion at low speeds is, by public estimates, comparable to ambient sea noise. It produces sound below the noise floor of the ocean itself. Second, the hull coating. The outer surface of the Yasin M is covered in anechoic tiles. Rubberized polymer sheets around 100 millimeters thick, designed to absorb incoming active sonar pings and damp radiated noise escaping outward. Active sonar that hits the hull comes back weaker. Passive sonar listening for hull noise hears nothing. Third, the reactor. The KTP-6 pressurized water reactor uses natural circulation at low power settings. No coolant pumps running, no mechanical noise propagating through the hull. A submarine running on natural circulation is, by physics, quieter than one with any mechanical machinery rotating at all. Combined cost of K561 Kazan, about $1.6 billion US. Combined cost of every NATO platform she defeated that day, about 37 billion US dollars. The ratio, 23 to 1. The ratio she was designed to achieve.
Here's the math that should keep every NATO admiral awake at night. On one side, the wall. $37 billion of carriers, escorts, attack submarines, patrol aircraft, helicopters, and seabed sensor networks. 40 years of refinement, the most expensive anti-submarine system in the history of warfare. On the other side, one Yasin M-class submarine. $1.6 billion. One hull, one crew, one mission. The Russian submarine spent 18 hours inside the kill envelope of the American carrier without being detected by a single platform on either side, in either domain, at any depth. Then she surfaced, not to attack, to send a message. The message was simple. The most expensive warship in the world is not safe from a submarine that costs 4% of its escort's price tag. The acoustic gap between Russian submarine technology and Western anti-submarine technology has closed. On that day, it inverted. In modern naval warfare, the most dangerous weapon is not the one that fires. It's the one that gets close enough to fire, and then doesn't. Inside the Pentagon, in the 72 hours that followed, 3 classified after-action reviews opened. The first studied the acoustic signature data captured during Kazan's surface and dive. The only direct measurement of a Yasin M in operational conditions any Western intelligence service has ever obtained. The second examined every sonobuoy track, every hydrophone log, every dipping sonar return from the 18 hours of her approach, searching for the contact that should have been there. They didn't find one. There was no missed cue. There was no analyst failure. There was no detection to miss. Kazan had been below the threshold of the entire Western sensor architecture. The third review was the one nobody wanted to write, the strategic assessment. If Kazan had fired, USS Gerald R. Ford would have been on the bottom of the Norwegian Sea within 90 seconds of weapons release. The most expensive warship ever built. 5,000 crew, a nuclear power plant, the strategic naval centerpiece of the American Atlantic posture, gone. No NATO platform, not the destroyers, not the cruiser, not the submarines, not the aircraft, would have prevented it. Not because they were not trying, because they could not have heard it coming. Captain Morozov received the Order of Courage. He has not commented publicly on the operation. The Russian Northern Fleet has not commented either. They didn't need to. The message had already been delivered. There's an old principle in naval warfare. The dangerous submarine is not the one that fires. The dangerous submarine is the one that gets close enough to fire and decides not to. Because every time that happens, the entire defensive posture of the side it stalked is revealed to have been imaginary. The walls don't exist. The sensors don't see. The doctrine doesn't hold. NATO spent 40 years and tens of billions of dollars building an anti-submarine system meant to make the open ocean safe for the platforms it values most. On the morning of Steadfast Defender, one Russian submarine spent 18 hours proving that system has gaps nobody on the NATO side knows how to close. Yet. She didn't fire a single weapon. She didn't need to. The silence was the weapon.